Welcome to the Make School Great Again podcast, where we challenge the status quo in education, cast a bold kingdom vision for the next generation. We are your hosts, Kale and James Clanfield, and this is Series 2, Changemakers, and it's all about the pioneers who are putting faith into action, the parents, teachers, and leaders who are shaping or reshaping education, discipleship, and culture right where they are.
Today, we are joined by an incredible voice of courage and conviction, Kristan Whann, known across the country as the Patriot teacher. With a growing national platform, she's been boldly speaking God's truth in a My Truth world and helping parents navigate what actually is happening inside of American schools. Kristan has spent years in public education, is now teaching in Christian school, bringing first-hand experience and insight into the cultural shifts happening in the classroom and what it looks like to stand firm in faith, truth, and to be a true patriot in a time when it is increasingly unpopular to do so. Welcome, Kristan. We're so happy to have you join us. Thank you for joining us. And tell us a little bit about yourself as we start our conversation today.
Hey, it's nice to be here. I am just a mama and a teacher. I never expected to venture into this world of being outspoken on social media about what I'm seeing in education, but I do believe that that's what God has done and has opened that door. So I'm just honored to be able to be a voice in this space. Yes, I went from public education to private education. So that has been quite a journey and such a culture shock. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Awesome. I must say, your shirt is incredible. For the viewers that are on YouTube or are going to watch this, you have to go on and read what it says. No, I should actually say what it is. For those that can't see it, tell us, where did you get it? And because I think it's awesome. Talk us through it.
Well, it says violates community standards. And when I saw it, I knew that I had to buy it. I got it from Conviction Co. I do have a discount code for them. I don't know what it is offhand, but yes, it is an awesome shirt. I wear it a lot.
I love it. Let's start with the viral video, because just in the pre-show, you were talking about how this all sort of got started, and that piqued my interest because I wasn't aware of that part of the journey, but that sounds like a key moment in, I guess, leading us to where we are right now. So talk us through maybe just the thought or no thought behind posting something that then has gone viral went viral across the US.
Yes, that was such a shocking moment for me because I actually had no social media presence at the time, but I had so many parents just concerned about what they were seeing in their children's curriculum. And I, as a teacher, I was concerned myself because I was seeing things being infiltrated within the curriculum that didn't align with the values that I hold dear. And these gender ideologies specifically being pushed constantly. So I decided that I was going to take to social media for the first time ever. I had never spoken on this before. I created a TikTok account, had no one on there, so I thought I was being safe. I was like, nobody's going to really listen to this, right? But to my surprise, yes, I said something that a lot of teachers are afraid to say out loud. And basically what I said was if schools or if teachers are allowed to speak these gender ideologies, it was a hypothetical statement. Basically, if they're allowed to tell kids that they can choose their gender, then I should also be allowed to teach the opposite, that God created them a boy or a girl on purpose for a purpose. You would have, oh my goodness. It was insane how crazy the left went after that. Now, it started off with a whole lot of support. Amen, that's awesome. That is so true. And then it hit the wrong side of TikTok, and I ended up with harassing messages, death threats. But it sparked outrage. But it also I think that's what lit a fire in me because I was like, if this is bothering them so bad, there's some truth to it. And it ended up being spread nationally, and that just has kept me speaking ever since.
Yeah, wow. So something as simple as I guess a conviction almost of what you're seeing has turned into now this platform that you've got sort of speaking into the space in the education, but also in the, I guess, the everyday society world as well. So This was back when you were in the public school system, correct? Yeah,
Yes.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So, what were some of those things, I guess, that you were recognizing as a Christian inside of the public system that I guess started to have you questioning, or I guess eventually led to that transition into the private Christian space?
Yeah. But there was a lot of factors that led me to Christian education, one being my own children. It wasn't so much because I actually come from a very conservative community, and a lot of the teachers that I teach with agreed with my stand and really took my side. But I have my own kids and I wanted an education that aligned with our family values. And so that kind of was the reason why I transitioned, was for my own kids' sake, because I was seeing so much in the public education space that I just did not feel was appropriate for them to be exposed to. And a lot of that was even just the other children in the schools that were being exposed to things at home. So it was more of a protection, the mama bear in me, like wanting to protect my own kids. So that was really the reason why we ended up making that transition.
And from my perspective, I mean, being in Louisiana, my initial thoughts are, well, that's, southern state, things are probably conservative, and you wouldn't necessarily see those kind of ideologies creeping in. But it sounds like, no, in the public system, they're almost everywhere. Would that be a true understanding over there, even though you are in a conservative
Yes.
part of the US?
Yes, it's definitely creeping in. It's more subtle than it probably is in like California in
Mm-hmm.
more of the liberal states, but it is definitely creeping in. That's kind of what caused me to speak up, because I was like, "Oh no, not in my small town, not in this community. This is not happening here." Because I had quite a few parents who had contacted me and was like, "Is this okay that my child's teacher is giving them surveys that ask them about their gender identity?" And I was like, "No, no, we don't do that here in the South. And so I was like, no, we're not confusing kids with this stuff. And there were also some books within the curriculum that I taught from that had some questionable things. There's also a lot of, I guess you could call it CRT, is what a lot of people are calling it, the critical race theory, where we're making white children feel guilty about the color of their skin. And I can't get down with any of that. Um, so yeah, it is definitely creeping into these smaller communities. And if people do not rise up and be a voice, then it is going to continue to infiltrate our
Mm.
Yeah.
curriculums.
Yeah, I love the movement of the term mama bear. I
Yeah.
think with all of these things going on, like the mama bears have just united around the world. I feel like, especially in the US, and we're seeing mums respond, and the clips even just in school where they have those sort of, I guess, what are they called? School meetings, and parents can go and give their 2 cents for
Those
like
school board meetings. Yep,
school
you
board
got to
meetings.
show up to those.
Yeah, that's right. That's quite a foreign concept here. We don't
Yeah.
have things like that, but we're aware of them through the internet, and
Mm.
we're seeing that reaction from parents and mama bears in particularly that are just like, this isn't going on, which they need to do. And I guess that and then on the other hand, we see that if you were speaking up and going to those school board meetings, you were then being targeted as being, or labeled as, an extremist
Uh-huh.
or a Christian fundamentalist, and all these terms that the left likes to use to smear Christians and those of faith. But, I saw so much courage, and would encourage, obviously, mamas out there, if you're listening, if you have a place and an opportunity to have a voice, like, do it, because
Yes.
I think there's still a lot of families here that don't actually realize what is going on in curriculums.
Mm.
Yes.
And so, and the US, it's same for you. Do you feel like in your community there's more people awake now, or they're still getting there?
I have definitely seen in recent years courage breeding courage, for sure. Like you
Yeah.
said, mamas showing up to those school boards, but even fathers as well.
Mm.
Mhm.
That that has been extremely encouraging to me. I think people are seeing, okay, if they can speak up, so can I. And what I would like to see more of is educators being a voice. I'm seeing parents step up, and praise God for that, but a lot of teachers still feel so silenced. We will literally be teaching from a curriculum that we disagree wholeheartedly with, that we feel is inappropriate to expose kids to, and not say a word because it's our job, right? We don't want to lose our job. But these kids, I mean, some of this stuff, like if more teachers were to rise up and speak out, they can't fire all of us, right? They can't fire us all. So we've got to rise up with courage, you know? This isn't a time to be silent.
I think you mentioned something really important there. And I think that this sort of contrast between what we're used to in our sort of Australian context when it comes to curriculum and how it's very much sort of mandated from the government, how it's sort of established and set up. And it's exactly what you're saying there, Kristan, around, we sort of go with it because we feel obligated to. It's written in the curriculum documents. We have to hit certain standards. And so how do, I guess, bringing that faith and that courage into the classroom, how do you as an individual or others, sort of the teachers as the individuals, sort of how do we step up, or would you encourage them to have that faith and courage in the classroom to step up in the conviction, knowing that God's word is true, and even if it's not in a Christian school context, it still goes against some of these ideologies that is definitely being pushed by the government, educational boards, society even.
Yeah. They look at it as you got to be inclusive of everyone, right? And so what I notice is that there's a lot of exclusion happening when it comes to people of faith. Those are the people that have to walk on eggshells. Those are the people that aren't allowed to express their love for God because somebody might be offended. And I think that the best thing that people can do, especially educators, is to make sure that they are not compromising in their own walk with the Lord. And I think that's where a lot of educators are coming to that point where I love teaching, but I'm not willing to compromise and speak on topics to children and teach them as facts when I know in my heart that it's not right. And so if educators feel that way, they have to find the courage to say, you know what? I can't do this. And it got to that point for me. It's like, okay, and I didn't get fired. I really think that was the Lord, on I don't know. Some people do lose their jobs for saying the things that I've said. I think that everybody has their own path in that, and that no matter if you get fired or if you don't, God's going to use it for his glory. But I think teachers just have to get to a point where they're willing to say the hard stuff, or we are not going to make a change. Nothing is going to change. So
That's such a powerful word in this space. I'm so glad you brought that up. The topic of compromise. And I know for myself, that was a similar feeling where I was increasingly agitated in my context and was like, can't keep doing this. I need to find a way to make a change in some way. And that, when you said compromise, I was reminded when my mum passed away when I just finished high school. But one of the things she said to me in her last birthday card message was, do not compromise. And it's always stuck with me because at the time when I was that age, I think I understood what the word meant, but in today's age, it means it has such an even heavier weight because of just the society we're living in, that this idea of compromise, like continuing to do something or just thinking, well, it's a paycheck or I just need to keep my job. Actually, there is a space for the Lord to look after you. Like you need, it's sort of a challenge. That's where faith is really tested, right? When you stand up for your faith and go, "This enough's enough. I'm not willing to have my faith over here and then school over here. It's all one." And
Yeah.
And like you said, teachers are they're on their own journey navigating that. But I think that's an encouraging message you bring for those still in that spot, trying to navigate, what do I do?
I
That
know.
idea of not compromising is really powerful.
It's such a tough place to be because this is your livelihood. You love the classroom, you love teaching, and you know you risk all of that if you say what you believe to be right and true. I don't think teachers should be in that position, but that is the position that many of them are in. And so I have a lot of compassion and grace for that. I do think that the only way that we can make a change is if there are teachers that are willing to go against the grain and say the hard things out loud and show up to the school boards and expose the curriculums. Actually, I'm being reminded of a friend of mine. I love her so much. Her name is Jessica Tapia. Y'all may have heard of her. She got fired for saying, I'm not allowing boys in the girls' locker rooms at school. Like, I'm not going to allow these girls to be exposed to that. And she got fired for not being, gender inclusive. She was a teacher in California. And but look at her today. I mean, she is making so many waves and doing so many things for the kingdom of God. She's not in the classroom, but God had a different path for her, and she's doing amazing. Like you said, God makes a way. He is not going to leave us, like we just, if somebody's standing up for what is right and true and biblically accurate, like God's going to have your back. And I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Guys, so you talk about a God's truth in a my truth world. So what do you mean by that sort of practically in the day-to-day? What does that look like? And I guess what does that mean to you? Why do you think that's important?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important to recognize that so many people in our society, I think in society as a whole, we've adopted this idea that we can create our own truth, that there's no objective truth. And so I think it's important for kids to know, like, there are objective truths. You can't just change, like there's all these gender ideologies being pushed in schools. You can't just change your gender, you're a boy or a girl, and so I think that it has raised a lot of confusion in the minds of children, which is really what I'm fighting against. I don't believe in confusing kids with, all these ideologies being infiltrated in schools. And so I think sticking to objective truth, not creating our own truth, I think that's super important.
It's I was just going to add when you brought up this topic, James, this question, I was like, wasn't that a phrase that Oprah popularized with this idea of, I think she said in the Golden Globe, I just looked it up on Google then. She made a quote during a Golden Globe speech where she said, "Your truth is the most powerful tool." I thought she might have said something about it many years before that, where this idea or even just that phrasing of your truth and this idea that, well, it's true for you. What's true for you is different for this and this and this. And just this total extraction of like any kind of foundational truth existing, right?
Yeah.
And that's where
that
all this is
so
stemming
much
from.
confusion.
So much confusion.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a basis to stand upon then, right? So you don't have a foundation to be able to either have a discussion about something or to come to a conclusion on something because, well, it's true for me. So, does that take away that it's true for someone else? So
exactly. And one of the things that we actually teach in our curriculum is kids being able to identify fact from opinion. Well, if you're teaching, this whole my truth, then they can't decipher what's a fact, what's an opinion. It just leaves them so confused. And so, definitely coming against that.
And I think currently there's a push towards some people's truths being sort of trumping other people's truths, depending on, what society is pushing, what typically the left is pushing. So as much as, we would say it's true that there's male and female, all of these other ideologies that are coming out as well, that's that person's truth and my truth is then therefore redundant, which is built on a foundation. So it just adds this confusion. I sort of was thinking about what does that then look like in the difference between your experience in the public school system compared to the Christian school system? Do you have more of a certainty or a strength to be able to say this is truth because of the biblical Christian foundation in comparison?
Yes, A really good question. So, whenever I moved from public to private, it was definitely a culture shock being able to speak on biblical biblical standpoints as truth, like this is biblical truth. That's how we speak on it, versus in a public school it's like this is an idea, or we just didn't even speak on it at all. And so it was a huge shift, but it also shifts the entire culture of the school. So that was interesting to me. Whenever you have biblical principles integrated throughout your entire curriculum, how much that positively impacts the entire culture of the school. And so I think that's a great question. There's so many things that I've noticed that are different between the two cultures, for sure.
Let's kind of keep that same thread of, the Christian schooling in America. I mean, obviously there's a spectrum of that, and I'm sure there's schools that do that really well, others that maybe even are probably considered more progressive Christian schools. But if we stay on that thread of a good Christian school, are you seeing that they're holding to, we spoke in the pre-show, the dirty word patriot or patriotism? Is that something that's also being reflected in good Christian schools? Over here in Australia, I'm sort of phrasing this question very well, but the context, patriotism is a bad thing. It's sort of like, we had the government and councils are always trying to shut down Australia Day things. In the US, it's obviously, there's probably similar circles that do that, but within the schooling system, are you seeing that there are schools that are aligning and trying to stand firm on being patriotic and standing up for their country's history and values and Judeo-Christian heritage? Are you seeing that?
Yes, and that's part of one of the things that I love about teaching at the school that I teach at, because I am able to be patriotic. We actually start every morning with the routine of saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Then we say the pledge to the Christian flag and the pledge to the Bible. And it just sets the day up for it's just such a beautiful culture and atmosphere. I actually posted a video on TikTok with our morning routine, and it got so much. I was shocked that it outraged so many people. I'm like, this is a Christian school. Why are you mad about this? But the kids love it, and it just sets the tone for the day. So I definitely think that it is insane that schools have I understand why public schools don't say the pledge to the Christian flag, but many of them aren't even saying the Pledge of Allegiance to start the day. So I know when I was in school, that was tradition, but it's not in many schools anymore.
Why do you think that it's important to hold on to that, that patriotism of, and embedding that into part of the day, into sort of that education? Why is that important with what you believe in, and then that's the name of your Instagram handle, right? So the Patriot teacher, like, why is that so crucial, do you think?
I think it teaches kids to like respect and honor the people that fought for the freedoms that they have today. I mean, I think citizenship is important. I think kids need to understand that everything they have didn't come for free, that somebody fought for those freedoms that they have. And so I think that there's an honor that needs to be there, a respect that needs to be there. And so I think it's very important. I don't let my students leave the fourth grade without knowing the preamble and knowing at least the first 10 amendments. We get a little bit deeper into that in the fifth grade, but my students, they understand their rights as an American. They understand why they have the freedoms that they have today. I think that it's important that kids understand that.
One of the organizations I see helping bring those messages and themes, ideals back to the fore is PragerU. I get emails that have great resources, and I'll be often working and an email will come through with like a latest resource, and I'm like, I wish I could use that in the context here, because you can see that their mission is to, they're responding to this sort of idea that patriotism is bad and we need to become global citizens, right? I mean, that's sort of the messaging here as well. Let's just erode any kind of sense of citizenship or borders and boundaries. but I see them putting together some really good resources that I think I may have used some of their stuff before. But are you
Yeah.
seeing a resurgence, and are you creating resources, or are you seeing a resurgence in that part of education that's having a positive impact?
Yeah, there are some really good free resources. PragerU Kids is great. Also, Liberty Kids have like entire episodes on like the founding of America. Ben Carson's Little Patriots is phenomenal. Have y'all heard of Ben Carson?
Yes.
My goodness, he has, and those things are free, and a lot of parents just don't even realize it. He actually came to our school to speak to our students last year.
Awesome.
You got Ben Carson. Lots of people are coming out with amazing resources that really do teach kids what it looks like to be patriotic and to so, and then there's also, I have a couple of them written down, Wright's Homeschool Academy and like Unfold History. There's a bunch of them, and a lot of this stuff is free, and parents just don't even realize that it's available.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm so pleased to hear that. I remember when I first, my first year of marriage, my wife's American, as I was mentioning, and I walked into her brother's, where he was living at the time, and I'm sort of adjusting to American culture quite quickly in this time. And one of the first things I see on the wall is, I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. Just like, boom, right there. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, I would never see that in an Australian home.
Wild to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that line stuck with me. And then I was like, that's the line from the song, like Trump plays at his rallies.
Yeah.
The name of the artist escapes me. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do know the song.
Lee somebody. Someone will correct me on that. But but just that kind of boldness in like, no, I'm proud to be an American. Like, this is the land of the free, and we're going to protect that and make sure our kids know about this. And it's not something that was, like you said, just came cheap. It costs lives, and a lot of blood was spilt, and we're going to defend the right to have freedom of speech. And you know,
Yeah. And it's funny because if you have the American flag outside of your house, or you wear a patriotic T-shirt or a hat, or you show patriotism, they just assume that you're a white nationalist or a Nazi or you're MAGA. And it's like, why can't we just love our country, you know, and be grateful for our freedoms instead of having all these negative labels attached to it? Like, when did that happen? When did it happen where it's a bad thing to be proud to be an American? And so I see that creeping into our country. And so we're just trying to keep patriotism alive over here.
Yeah.
That's, I love it.
Our context.
We've lost it.
Yeah.
There's like a pushback happening here in small pockets, but like James was mentioning earlier, like there are certain councils and areas around Australia where they're like banning Australian flags or selling things around Australia Day, or like every year when it's, you know, our Australia Day, it's like there's always the push, oh, should we cancel it? Should we change it? Like everyone's coming out and creates new terms like Invasion Day and all this sort of stuff. But it's this just erosion of what it means to be proud of where you come from, and standing on, you know, Christian heritage and principles is just like, that has to be completely destroyed because, you know, where the new agenda is this global citizen idea and terminology. Do you hear that kind of phrasing over there as well? Like, we're global citizens. We're no longer American or Australian. This idea of we're all just sort of in this together singing Kumbaya. Is that a bit of the messaging you're picking up on?
I don't really see so much that. There is definitely a divide of people who share how much they hate America. And if you're on social media long enough, a lot of people are just like, well, then leave, you know, this is the best country ever, you know? So there is definitely a division there of people who are anti-America. And going back to the school system, we do see a lot of those anti-America ideologies in the curriculum as well. So it's definitely, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand why we would not be grateful to live in a country where we are so free, you know, so free to be successful and chase our dreams. But there are people out there that are fighting against that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that's very much what your socials is all about, right? To give that voice, to have that perspective, that discussion. And that's in the education space, that's in, what you're seeing around with whatever's trending. I guess what inspires the notice something, or you see something and hear something. Is it you're wanting to offer that perspective? Is it because you've had that initial sort of clip that went trend, and you're like, hey, I've got a trusted voice here. I want to speak into this space, and because of your own convictions, you feel that you want to continue to offer the truth that isn't being said. So yeah, what's the sort of thinking behind how you just come to the conversations that you're leading, that you're having, and what are results are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that I just realized that I really at the heart of it, I want to encourage parents and teachers to also be a voice, because I know that that's the only way that we're going to make waves and we're going to make a change and a difference. And I do see, because people are speaking up, that things are getting changed. There are some schools that aren't, they're not going to go along with this, allowing boys into the girls' locker rooms. They're going to send out parent permission slips before introducing their kids to sex ed. But some places, they just completely step on the toes of parental rights, So I think that the reason why we're making waves and why we're seeing those things happen is because there has been teachers and parents willing to go up to the school boards and be a voice. And I think if we continue to be a voice and we continue to speak up, that we can move our school system back to what it's meant to be. That's the hope, right? I want our public school systems to succeed. Right now, they are not. They are failing. Our students, we have more money pushed into public education, and our state test scores are dropping. That's also a huge. It also encouraged me to speak even more on that, because I go to a private school, completely different curriculum, and these kids are so high academically. Well, what's the difference here? And I think we need to get back to teaching. Reading, writing, math. We need to focus on academics and not activism. There's a lot of activism happening in our public school systems, and we've got to fight against that, because our kids deserve better.
And it's so true that throughout history, wherever the Bible is taught or there's Christian influence, like education rises. I mean, there's a correlation between the teaching of scripture and having a biblical understanding and just the improvement of, your ability to think and reason. And, that's just the power of God's word, broadly speaking.
Yes.
But when you remove that and then you replace those basics, like you were mentioning, with activism and another belief system that totally sweeps in, whether it's, CRT and all the other ideologies they're pushing, you just see this complete dumbing down, and the students are literally, I believe that's an intentional move to basically keep them at the lowest part of the totem pole so they can't think or make decisions for themselves. And so the reaction, we're seeing critical thinking. People are like, growing in their academics, but as people and asking questions, like that's what the enemy does. They don't want that.
Right.
I'm reading Brave New World by Aldous Huxley with a student, and he's in a horrible schooling system at the moment, which is just like he's seeing what it is. And in light of this book, which is a phenomenal book just for a lot of reasons, but the themes of how the suppression of, even teaching history. I mean, revisionism, right, is a big issue. There's like the kids are not being told true history. But in the book, that's something that they intentionally do. We don't want people knowing history, or we can't let too much of science and free thinking happen, because that means we're going to lose control and we can't manage the population. And so all these themes are coming up in this book, which was, written in the 30s, I think. But it's fascinating in light of what we're seeing, particularly in public schools.
I agree. Yes.
So you do a little bit for sort of creating some resources for families or parents. What do they look like? What's the purpose of those? And sort of Kale and I, with Transformation Network, sort of operate mainly in that homeschooling space. And so a lot of the parents that are connected to us, obviously, are looking at how do they build their own sort of resources and tools that they can access and that they can sort of go to, which they know is a source of truth, that it has good sort of foundation, whether it be biblically or academically. So yeah, you talk a little bit about some resources. What does that look like?
I've just partnered with homeschool curriculum places, and I actually partnered with PragerU for a little while, and I still speak on their materials. So I just share resources that I have filtered through and looked at really deeply for myself, like the Ben Carson's Little Patriots. And I use all of that stuff in my own classroom,
Yeah.
just kind of integrating it, just really good resources. And a lot of it is, like I said, completely free.
Mm.
Right now, I'm working with Wright's Homeschool Academy. They have a complete course on critical thinking. It is amazing, and it really gets kids to think about hypothetical situations, reasoning through what choice would they make if they were put in certain situations. So I would highly recommend that course for homeschool parents.
Yeah.
I'm definitely pro homeschool. So I like to share a lot of resources with homeschool families.
Mm.
And then Unfold History has an amazing video series that I know my kids and my students have really enjoyed watching. It's all about early America, so I would highly recommend them as well.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I was just saying that's great. I think we can. I'm sure we'll be able to provide some links
Mm.
in the description, because I know we'll have some families here, even though we've got most families listeners currently are Australia based. Families that do catch on with us in the US, I'm sure will benefit from those links you mentioned. So we'll make sure we grab them at the end.
Yeah, I love how both Kale and I come from school background, both in mainly private Christian schools in Sydney, and now sort of mainly operate in that homeschool sort of space now. But I love how you sort of, the reason why you chose Christian schooling and were intentional about that Christian school space is for your own boys and the intentional around home and family. So how do you see that working, whether that be personally or sort of, I guess, at that ideal of integrating faith, education, whether that's homeschool or at a good Christian school, and family?
Like, how do I see it, like, going into the curriculum? How do we
Yeah, I guess
use
how
it?
does that work well together? Yeah.
Yeah. It really does. It's amazing, especially if you're teaching on early America. There's so many Christian principles embedded throughout. Almost everything that you teach has some type of lesson. And so a lot of times if I'm teaching on let's say we're reading a story. Well, a lot of the themes within the story have biblical principles that you can pull out. And actually, my students recognize them a lot, like principles of kindness, of sharing, just basic godly character that can be pulled out. And it opens the room up for a lot of great discussions. So I think almost anything you teach, you could find some type of biblical principle to integrate into that, even if the curriculum isn't per se Christian curriculum. So I think it's all about how you personally introduce a topic and teach a topic versus if the curriculum is actually Christian. A lot of our curriculum that we use is Christian. Actually, pretty much all of it, I believe, is faith-based that we use at the school that I go to. It's actually homeschool curriculum that we use, and it's very effective.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, these kids are academically just very, very high. That was so shocking to me because as a public school educator, kids would come to me and I would have to try to get them to grade level, like literally move mountains in 1 year to get them to grade level. And I worked really hard to do that. But then I get these kids, private education, my first year last year, and they're reading. I have third graders on 8th grade reading levels. And I'm like, what do I do with that? What, why am I here? So it's incredible because it just goes to show you, like it's working. So like the Christian curriculum that we use, it's effective and it's working.
And is that, being in Louisiana, I'm sure the laws would differ, but is there an openness to use your own curriculums in that setting, or because I know in Australia, state to state, it can vary a little bit. We do have a national curriculum, much like Common Core, where it's, to keep registration, you have to sort of show that you're doing this, that, and the other. What's that like in Louisiana? Do you have more flexibility and freedom?
Okay, teachers in Louisiana are giving, in public school, we are given a book and it is completely scripted. And if you're not going along with that curriculum in a lot of schools, there's consequences for that. They want you following that curriculum to a T.
Yeah, wow.
So there's not a ton of flexibility there. And I think that has caused teachers to lose their love for teaching because there's no creativity being allowed. So when I went to private education, there was this flexibility. We have a curriculum, we have to follow the curriculum, but I can also integrate any other type of materials that go along with that curriculum. And in fact, we're encouraged to do so. Like TPT, teachers pay teachers. A lot of teachers don't know when school, it was like, no, you can't use teachers pay teachers. They didn't want us using it because it was going outside of curriculum, outside of their script. But it had a lot of fun stuff that ask teachers what they feel their students are going to enjoy doing. We know what our students are going to learn best with and the materials that they need to succeed and grow. Like, get teachers' opinions on that. But they're handing teachers these scripted curriculums, and we're just like, the kids they're not learning anything from this. It's not working, So yeah.
Wow, interesting. No, that's good perspective to have and insight, because I'm always curious to know how the different states vary and which ones are like, no, stick to the script, and then the others that are like, no, you do have some flexibility, or you can modify it to suit your context. And, being in a private school or charter school, obviously they're better places to have that flexibility.
Yeah, and I think it depends. Like, every school is different in their expectations. So it really depends on what school you teach at and, what they enforce.
Yeah, I sort of thinking about those differences between the American system, Christian schools in America compared to the public schools, and then what we have in Australia. I think it's always helpful to hear those different experiences. And I think with that teachers pay teachers, even, it's like there's support, right? There's connections that can be there. And so it sort of brings, unfortunately, our conversation to an end. We wanted to thank you so much for you joining us. If you had links, or how can our listeners connect with you? I know you've got a few sort of resources as well as items that you sort of promote and sell. Tell us a little bit about those and how we can find those. And we will also share the link under all of our profile.
Yeah. I have a couple different, like I mentioned in the podcast, a couple different homeschool resources that I highly recommend. So I can give you those. And then I also just opened my own little teacher clothing store. So if there's any teachers that, want to shop, they can shop my link there. I can give you that. They have a lot of cute teacher shirts and things that I guess would align with what we stand for. And if you use code FREEDOM, you get a discount. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's my main platform. That's where I speak on a lot of these different topics. It's that Patriot Teacher on Instagram.
Fantastic. And I'm thinking some of that swag, kind of like what you're wearing now.
Yeah, it's kind of like
sort
this.
Of stuff. It's great. Yeah, I did have
a
little look.
I don't have this on there. This came from a totally different store, but yeah, it's kind of like this. It can be a little controversial if you like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
we
all
like that
about
sort
that.
of thing.
I'm just about to launch a store for similar kind of things, so I'd love to chat about maybe having some of your stuff on there at some point.
Yeah,
because it's good fun. But I think when teachers feel empowered and they know that there's a community and people that actually feel the same way, sometimes it takes a T-shirt to be like, I think she's one of me. Like, I can see myself here. Like, it's a good conversation starter, right?
Yeah, it's really good to know you're not alone, because there's this idea. One of my shirts says, not all teachers are liberals. And everybody's like, that's so true. Because there's this idea that all teachers are liberals. And that's just not true. Many of us
Yeah.
we're not in class teaching all these crazy ideologies. So yes, it
Love it.
happens, but we're not all like that. So
Yeah. Thankfully. Thankfully. Courage reminds us that truth still matters and that in a culture built on only takes one teacher, one parent, and one to shift the direction of a generation. Her story is proof that standing for biblical truth is never wasted, never insignificant, and never done alone. If this episode stirred something inside of you, if it reminded you of who you are, what you believe, or what your children deserve, don't keep it for yourself. Share it with someone who needs courage today. Because movements don't start with crowds, they start with individuals willing to speak up, stand firm, and shine light exactly where God has placed them. Thank you so much, Kristan, for your time and your voice and sharing that with us. We are truly thankful and looking forward to continuing conversations with you.
okay, thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristan.
Thanks.